The world of international football had just witnessed the largest, most commercially successful World Cup tournament in human history across North America. Millions of fans were celebrating, and billions of dollars in revenue had been generated. But while the public attention was focused on the stadiums, pitch lines, and golden trophies, a massive administrative transformation was quietly taking place inside the executive offices of FIFA. Less than 1 week after the final whistle of the tournament, the British investigative media published a series of leaked confidential documents that sent shockwaves through the entire sporting landscape. The documents exposed a secret commercial blueprint engineered by FIFA President Gianni Infantino and a small circle of elite financial advisors. This was not a standard regulatory change or a minor adjustment to tournament scheduling. It was a radical, unprecedented strategy to privatize the business operations of the single most valuable sporting event on the planet, the FIFA World Cup. According to the leaks, FIFA had been quietly working for months to separate its non-profit governance duties from its massive commercial assets. The centerpiece of this strategy was the imminent launch of a newly formed semi-private subsidiary corporation, officially named FIFA Forward Enterprise, known in international corporate finance circles as FFE. This separate corporate entity will take absolute independent control over all lucrative commercial rights associated with future international tournaments. This includes global broadcasting television rights, major corporate sponsorships, digital media licensing, and premium stadium ticketing operations. The traditional structure of football governance was being systematically dismantled to make way for a modern corporate enterprise. Welcome back to Foul Play HQ. The sheer financial scale of this privatization plan is entirely unprecedented in the modern history of global sports. According to the verified financial sheets found in the leaks, FIFA's immediate objective is to raise $4.2 billion in raw liquidity. They intend to achieve this massive capital injection by selling off an exact 22% minority stake in the newly established FIFA Forward Enterprise subsidiary to outside private investors. To ensure the financial legitimacy of the transaction and to attract institutional capital, FIFA did not manage this process internally. They officially retained the global banking giant JP Morgan to act as the primary financial advisor, structural architect, and underwriter for the multi-billion-dollar privatization project. JP Morgan's involvement immediately signaled to Wall Street that the business of international football was transitioning into a highly standardized corporate asset class. However, it was the specific identity of the proposed leading investor group that intensified the geopolitical controversy surrounding the deal. The leaked documents confirm that the primary investment consortium selected by FIFA is a highly exclusive vehicle known as Thrive Eternal. This private equity vehicle is directly led and managed by the prominent American venture capitalist Joshua Kushner. In the worlds of international politics and high finance, Joshua Kushner is a name of immense significance. He is the younger brother of Jared Kushner, who served as a senior White House advisor and is the son-in-law of United States President Donald Trump. This immediate direct connection between the highest office of the United States government, a massive American private equity firm, and the president of global football created an immediate wave of regulatory skepticism. Critics began questioning how an open, international sports competition could be partially sold to a private consortium with such heavy political and familial ties to the host country of the tournament that had just concluded. The hidden development of this commercial strategy has provoked an unprecedented level of fury and resistance within European football governance. Within hours of the media publishing the leaked documents, the Union of European Football Associations, known globally as UEFA, issued a scathing, highly formal statement condemning the privatization initiative. UEFA's executive committee openly accused FIFA of attempting to sell the very soul of international football for corporate profit. In their public address, European football leaders stated that the historical governance, traditions, and competitive integrity of international football tournaments are not financial assets to be traded behind closed doors with zero structural transparency as to who gains financially from the deal. Senior football executives from England, Germany, and Italy have gone even further in their private assessments, describing Infantino's privatization plan as a commercial nuclear bomb for the sport. Many veteran administrators are publicly warning that this development is potentially far worse and far more dangerous to the ecosystem of football than the controversial European Super League proposal of recent years. The core of their argument rests on the fundamental nature of private equity capitalism. Critics argue that introducing aggressive private investors like Joshua Kushner's Thrive Eternal into the daily operations of the World Cup will inevitably create an extreme, unstoppable external pressure to maximize corporate profits at all costs. Private investors expect a massive return on their $4 billion investment. To achieve these financial targets, the private enterprise will be forced to squeeze more revenue from every single aspect of the sport. This means football fans will face hyperinflated ticket licensing fees. Broadcasters will be forced to pay exorbitant rights fees that will drive matches behind expensive television paywalls, and the tournament itself will face continuous pressure to expand even further. There are valid fears that private investors will eventually demand the World Cup be held every 2 years instead of 4, completely destroying the international match calendar and exhausting the elite players just to satisfy corporate shareholders. While Gianni Infantino has publicly entered the media landscape to defend the privatization strategy, his justifications have faced heavy skepticism. Infantino claims that the creation of FIFA Forward Enterprise is a necessary step toward the democratization of global football finance. He argues that by bringing in Wall Street expertise and $4 billion in immediate capital, FIFA can triple its development funding for smaller national associations across Africa, Asia, and Oceania, reducing the sport's historic financial dependence on the wealthy European market. However, investigative journalists investigating the corporate structure of the newly formed FFE subsidiary have uncovered deeply problematic clauses regarding the future leadership of the private company. The secret corporate bylaws indicate that the position of Chief Executive Officer and Commissioner of FIFA Forward Enterprise will be completely independent of the standard FIFA presidential elections. The document suggests that Gianni Infantino himself is internally lined up to assume the role of Supreme Commissioner of this private enterprise once his final mandatory term as FIFA president officially expires in the year 2031. This structural loophole means that even when Infantino is legally forced to step down from the non-profit governance side of FIFA, he could seamlessly transition into running the multi-billion-dollar commercial engine as a highly paid corporate executive. The corporate structure allows for a compensation package, bonuses, and stock options that are comparable to the multi-million-dollar salaries earned by commissioners of major American sports leagues, such as the National Football League and the National Basketball Association. This revelation changed the entire narrative of the scandal. It was no longer viewed by critics as a progressive financial restructuring for the benefit of global football development, but rather as a highly calculated institutional power grab designed to ensure Infantino's permanent, highly lucrative control over the business of the World Cup long after his presidential mandate ends. The political battle over the privatization of the World Cup has now reached a critical historic tipping point that could split the sport in half. Over the past 48 hours, senior sports ministers and football federation presidents from across Western Europe have been holding urgent, closed-door discussions to form a unified resistance against FIFA. The European nations are currently debating the implementation of the ultimate financial and sporting weapon, a complete coordinated European boycott of the next scheduled FIFA World Cup. A World Cup tournament without the participation of historical football powerhouses like France, Spain, England, Germany, and Italy would be a commercial and sporting catastrophe. It would instantly collapse the value of the broadcasting rights that JP Morgan and Joshua Kushner are currently attempting to buy, rendering the $20 billion valuation of FIFA Forward Enterprise completely worthless. European leaders are fully aware of their immense leverage in this conflict. They are aligning to prove a fundamental point to the executive offices in Zurich that the world's greatest sporting competition ultimately belongs to the clubs, the players, and the millions of fans who support them. And it was never Gianni Infantino's asset to sell to Wall Street. At the same time, international legal experts are analyzing whether FIFA's nonprofit status under Swiss regulatory law can be legally revoked if they transfer 22% of their primary commercial operations to a private, for-profit, Delaware-registered shell corporation. If the Swiss federal government decides to investigate FIFA for violating its nonprofit tax exemptions, Infantino could face a severe legal crisis within his own host country, potentially freezing the entire privatization project before a single dollar changes hands. To understand how football governance arrived at this moment of absolute corporate privatization, one must look back at the long, dark history of how FIFA has managed its commercial assets since the late 20th century. The concept of selling football rights to shadowy corporate entities did not originate with Gianni Infantino. It is a deeply ingrained institutional practice that dates back to the era of João Havelange and Sepp Blatter. In the 1980s and 1990s, FIFA allowed a single marketing company called International Sport and Leisure, known as ISL, to control the exclusive global television and sponsorship rights for multiple World Cup tournaments. It was later revealed during extensive Swiss criminal investigations that ISL had secured these multi-billion-dollar monopolies by paying tens of millions of dollars in direct bribes to senior FIFA Executive Committee members. When ISL collapsed into bankruptcy in 2001 with debts exceeding $300 million, it exposed a systemic culture of secret accounts, offshore shell companies, and fraudulent accounting that defined sports governance. Despite the public trials and promises of total reform following the massive 2015 FBI raids in Zurich, the fundamental operational methods of FIFA remained largely unchanged. The transition from Sepp Blatter to Gianni Infantino simply modernized the corporate language used by the organization. Instead of briefcases filled with cash and unrecorded bank transfers, modern sports corruption utilizes highly complex corporate restructurings, private equity consortiums, and sovereign wealth fund partnerships. The proposed launch of FIFA Forward Enterprise is simply the logical conclusion of this historical trajectory. It represents the final complete shift from an international sports federation responsible for the development of a game into a pure, profit-driven corporate conglomerate that views fans not as a community, but as consumers to be monetized. As the legal teams from FIFA, UEFA, and JP Morgan continue to exchange confidential warnings and public condemnations, the international football community finds itself entering a period of prolonged administrative civil war. The conflict over the $4.2 billion sale of FIFA Forward Enterprise is not a minor commercial disagreement. It is a fundamental battle over the future philosophy of global sport. On one side stands Gianni Infantino and his network of global member associations who view corporate privatization and Wall Street capital as the only mechanism to expand the commercial footprint of football into new, highly lucrative markets across North America and Asia. On the other side stands the historical European establishment backed by elite clubs and traditional fan bases who view the entry of private equity firms like Joshua Kushner's Thrive Eternal as an existential threat that will permanently compromise the competitive integrity of the sport. The ultimate resolution of this multi-billion-dollar standoff will determine what the FIFA World Cup will look like for the next 50 years. If Infantino succeeds in forcing the deal through, the beautiful game will officially become a corporate asset, managed by Wall Street bankers, optimized by private equity algorithms, and controlled by a self-appointed commissioner. If Europe succeeds in its boycott threat, the governing body of football faces total financial collapse and structural fragmentation. The proposed launch of FIFA Forward Enterprise has officially drawn the battle lines for the future of global sport. Football faces an uncertain era where the game belongs less to the fans and more to the corporate shareholders. The whistle just blew for the soul of the beautiful game. Subscribe to Foul Play HQ to stay tuned for the next chapters in sports corruption. See you next time.